Now, this has created a whole bunch of community feedback, pushback, arguments here in my hometown of Poway. And a lot of this is due to, there's a lot of different reasons for it. But let me tee it up this way. The farm in Poway is a project that was approved by voters in 2020, I believe. It was previously the Stoneridge Country Club. It was a golf course, and it had some community facilities and tennis courts there, but it was old. The golf course was having, as golf was prior to COVID, really declining participation. They were having declining revenues. They were having higher expenses because of the cost of water to keep that golf course going. And then a guy came in named Michael Schlesinger, bought the property. He wanted to convert it to housing. And people in Poway said, no, you can't do that because there is a rule, there is a zoning regulation that property is only for open space recreational. That's why it's a golf course. And so in order to change the zoning regulations in Poway in that particular parcel, he had to go to the voters in 2017. And Michael Schlesinger proposed a plan to convert it to housing in 2017, and it lost, largely due to the fact that people didn't like Michael Schlesinger because he had done this in Escondido and had done some very underhanded tactics there that really upset a lot of the locals. San Diegans got whiff of this and they decided to shut it down. They decided to vote no on that in 2017. Well, then coming into 2020, a local Powegian, Kevin McNamara, came on board. Kevin is a longtime Poway guy, a longtime Poway commercial real estate guy. And he worked out a deal with Michael Schlesinger that he would take essentially the driver's seat in driving this project. And Kevin McNamara would be the guy that Powegians could trust to make sure that this development is something that is reflective of the values of Poway. Kevin McNamara had great support from a lot of the leadership in Poway, from city council in Poway. Kevin McNamara really promoted the heck out of a plan. He brought a ballot petition to the voters in 2020, and it passed and it was approved. And by the way, Kevin McNamara came on my podcast. If you want to go back in time, I think it was episode 100 when Kevin McNamara joined me online and broke down this whole project of the farm. You want to go check it out. It's like a 3-hour podcast. It was remarkable. And so this was approved by the voters. And it got a lot of pushback, a lot of feedback. And already I see Pete Neild is already chiming in on the live stream. He's checking it out on Facebook and in YouTube. But anyways, Kevin McNamara got it to pass, and they started redeveloping that land not too long ago. About, I don't know, maybe about a year or so ago, they finally started grading the land. They started bringing out the bulldozers and reshaping the earth. And then all of a sudden they're starting to build all these houses. And the locals that lived along that golf course are still angry about it. Many of them, not all of them. There was a lot of people there that supported the change because the golf course had gone fallow prior. Many of the locals, they were still angry about it. Then, oh my God, with all these rains and the shifting drainage issues, some people's homes got flooded. In fact, one of the families who was probably one of the most vocal opponents to this project, her house got flooded, which was, made her even angrier. But at any rate, the voters voted for it. It was approved, and now development has been happening. Now, as part of this plan, they had a lot of very, nice community features. There was to be a butterfly farm on the farm. There was supposed to be a produce market at the farm. They were going to grow produce. There were going to be a flower farm there as well. There was going to be a restaurant / happy hour / bistro kind of a place yet to be defined. There was supposed to be a fitness center. They had a couple of other commercial ideas. I think they had a hall that could be rented for community events, and also like a very small little amphitheater that was tucked away there. There was a lot of open space and trails that was going to be surrounding this area. So, there was going to be houses built, and in these days, houses are built close together, but a lot of other portions of the property were going to be open space, recreational, and commercial. And so the locals generally accepted this reality that this was going to happen, that this development was ongoing. They understood that it went to a vote and the vote lost, or actually the vote won. The vote won to do this development. The people that were against it lost. Well, now things have changed. And this is where everyone's going kind of crazy. So I want to break this down because they want to take that fitness center there and massively expand it. And this is causing a lot of friction around our community here in Poway for a lot of different reasons. Now, one of the main reasons is that when Kevin McNamara sold the project to the people, in fact, he said so right on my podcast, that whatever is approved by the voters will not change. He was adamant about that there would be no changes. But as you get into a project, there are changes. And, so I knew that there was going to be probably some adjustment, as they start doing the construction. There would have to be obviously maybe adjustments of lots, and maybe the street might turn a little bit different. But now there's a tremendously different plan that's being proposed for this fitness center that has really gotten people upset, basically accusing Kevin McNamara of lying. And that's where it gets angry here, because we have a certain contingent of anti-growth, anti-development, you could say NIMBYs in Poway, that didn't want this project to occur at all. And interestingly, they're the ones that are generally upset about a lot of the development on Poway Road. And then they get angry. How come there's no development up in North Poway? And this particular project is in North Poway, but they were against that too. But they had accepted the reality that it was going to be built. But now, since there are changes, now they're getting upset again. So there's some highlights in this article from the Poway Chieftain, the PalmeradoNews.com, that I want to talk about. So Lifetime Fitness is a corporation. That's their brand name, Lifetime Fitness. And they're putting it together, this plan, because it was originally going to be like a little 3,000 square foot kind of a local yokel workout place for the people that lived in that community. Well, now we're talking about bringing in a national brand that's going to have fitness club memberships, and it's going to be like a 24-hour fitness kind of a place. I don't know if it's going to be actually 24 hours, but it's going to be like a full-on big-time fitness club. But they were still going to maintain the cafe and the bistro, and they were going to offer cardio and strength training and studio classes and all kinds of things that you would expect from a full-on legit fitness center. And the center would also feature outdoor activities, including swimming areas and space for 6 pickleball courts or 3 tennis courts. Now, notice the word is or. It was pickleball courts or tennis courts. Now, I want to take a tangent on this topic for right now. So the original country club there, the Stoneridge Country Club, had tennis courts. It was an old school kind of a country club, golf and tennis. And there were a lot of people that used those tennis courts that were members of that tennis club. Now, I don't know how many is a lot, but I happen to know one person, actually 2 people I know here in Poway that were part of that. It was like a ladies tennis group, and they were big supporters and advocates of the tennis club at the old Stoneridge course. And so when this was being proposed, this whole development, that was one of the big objections in the very early stages. Hey, what are you going to do at the tennis courts? We want our tennis courts. And it was always said, don't worry, there's going to be tennis courts. We're going to include them in the plan. Well, when the whole thing got blown up, a lot of those tennis players went down to the Arbolitos Tennis Club. And apparently a lot of them are happy being there. But, if you live on this part of town, you got to take a little bit of a drive. It's probably not that big of a deal. But at any rate, these people got displaced, and they were hoping to have tennis there for them. Well, a lot has changed between 2017 and now, or even 2020 and now. It's this thing called pickleball that is just exploding across the country. It is extremely popular, especially with seniors, because, it's like a miniaturized version of tennis. and it's a lot easier to play. So you don't, I mean, playing legit tennis, you've got to be pretty darn good to have like, a good rally in tennis. But, pickleball is kind of like a bigger version of ping pong, and it's outdoors, and it's very community friendly in terms of participation and activity. Now, granted, it makes a lot of noise, and I know people that live nearby don't like pickleball, but um, as a result, there's been a degradation of participation in tennis. In fact, tennis facilities around the country are seeing a decline in participation, a decline in membership. Just like golf was going through this sort of thing, right after the Great Recession is when golf really took a hit. So these sports, they kind of wane in popularity. They go up and down. So now they're saying 6 pickleball courts or 3 tennis, because it was going to be both. And I thought it was going to be even more than that. But if they're going to expand this club to be a lot bigger, I mean, it takes up more space. So you can't have as many of these courts. So there was a change right there. And so it turns out that the fitness center plans are more than 10 times the size of the original proposal that was approved by the voters. The original fitness center was to be 2,953 square feet and would take up all. The new center would take up all of the 30,500 square feet approved by voters for the open space recreation project. So you had this big open space recreation project. Now it's all indoors in this fitness center. So again, it's different than what was approved by the voters. But according to Bob Manis, the city's director of development services, he said that the new expected total amount of space that would be used by Lifetime, along with the other proposed recreational facilities, would be 49,000 square feet. That's incredible. I mean, it's a huge difference. So it's this increase in square footage that allowed Lifetime to propose the concept for their bigger, higher end fitness center instead of an almost 3,000 square foot center that was originally part of the 2020 vote. So basically, when they considered a larger footprint, making this a bigger facility, it becomes a more attractive opportunity for these corporate fitness centers to come in and monetize it. Because you're not going to get like a 24-hour fitness to roll in and try to make a 3,000 square foot club like the new next thing. They're not going to touch it. It's just going to be a little local yokel club. But now that it's bigger, now we can get a name brand in there. And that's what Kevin McNamara is trying to do. So according to Council Member Barry Leonard, Poway City Council Member Barry Leonard is District 2, and this is in his district. And he said he largely supports the project, but he had concerns about how close the Lifetime Fitness Center would be to the residents and the farm. Yeah, that's a fair point, because the building is bigger, so it might be closer. And there were other objections as well. I mean, Brian Pepin, who we had talked about in our last week's podcast, we talked about Brian Pepin. He says he would like to see some changes to the design of the fitness center. Okay. He says it's important. This is a quote from Brian Pepin. It's important to me that it looks more like Poway. So I hope that to see that improve even more. That's an interesting comment. I mean, what does look like Poway mean? I want it to look more like Poway. I mean, Poway is going through all of these changes right now. I mean, what is Poway what does it look like? Does it look like the new apartment buildings that are right there on the corner of Terrascan and Poway Road? Or does it look like the condos that are being built on the Poway Commons? I mean, what does Poway look like? And then on top of it, I don't know, I kind of have sort of a objection to, I mean, it's one thing for the city council to approve the project or not, but is it appropriate for the city council to be approving the architecture of the project? I have a problem with that. I mean, to me, that's a private property thing. That's something that should be left to the individual property owner or the architect that they hire to plan something. But the city council wants to try to micromanage it, but they don't necessarily always micromanage it the way that most people want them to. That's for sure. Now, going further with this, Ron Lewis, who is a Poway resident, he was disappointed that the project might not include tennis courts. This is what I was just talking about earlier. He says it had been confirmed before and after the November 2020 vote on the project, there would be between 6 and 8 courts built, between 6 and 8 tennis courts. Now the proposal is, what did we say? Let's go back to find it. Yeah, it's 3 tennis courts or 6 pickleball courts. So this is a really a shrinkage of those outdoor courts and an expansion of this fitness center. And he went on to say, my request to the city council is very simple. Have the developer build what was proposed to the voters of Poway and approved by the voters of Poway. Well, how can you argue with that? I mean, if the voters approved it, it should be what the voters approved, right? Now, we can debate whether or not the voters should be the ones approving this in the first place, which I generally don't think they should. But the fact is, that's the reality that exists. The voters approved it. And the leader of the project, Kevin McNamara, was very insistent that there would be no changes. What the voters approved is what it will be. Because a lot of people had doubts that, oh, they're just going to pass it. And then once it's passed, they're going to change everything. Now, I know in a lot of cases, a lot of categories, this plan is generally rolling out as was approved by the voters, but there are some exceptions. This is one of the exceptions. There's some other exceptions with some of the nuances of the homes and the lots. Like I said, I kind of expected that as they started grading and they started doing construction, you would expect there would be a couple of deviations, but this is a fundamentally different thing if they're going to expand this fitness center. And then Kevin McNamara actually appeared at one of the city council meetings and talked about it. And he said, we have a nice community, but we don't have great retail and we don't have great restaurants. Lifetime's offering us greatness, and I thought that was worth it. That's a really loaded topic, comment there. Okay, is Poway a nice community? Yeah, it is. I mean, there's no utopia, but Poway generally is pretty good place. We don't have great retail in Poway. Is that true? Pretty much true. Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, there's been some changes and some things to get excited about in Poway where retail is improving a bit, but for the most part, retail in Poway is a step down from retail in other parts of the county. I mean, that's why a lot of people do a lot of retail shopping in Carmel Mountain Ranch, because there's a lot of better options. Now, granted, I don't know if Poway would want to have a Carmel Mountain Road right through the center of Poway. But then again, some might argue that that's what we kind of have with Poway Road. But at any rate, is the retail in Poway great? I would say no. So McNamara has a point there. And then he goes on, we don't have great restaurants. Well, generally speaking, that's true too. But there have been some positive developments there. There have been newer restaurants that are going in that I think we can get a bit excited about that are a lot better. But, by no means is this going to be like downtown San Diego or La Jolla, where you're going to have a lot of, Michelin 5-star restaurants or anything like that, or anything even close. So that, to me, was one of the aspects of the farm that I found so interesting, is besides the fact that it was going to be more housing to address the housing crisis and to transform a fallow golf course into something that's productive. But at the same time, there was going to be a place there where, there would be another food option, maybe a place to go for Friday happy hour. And it was not too far from where I live. And I thought, hey, that's not a bad idea. Now, is that what we're going to get? I don't know how much the retail in this particular facility isn't going to be like, having a big box retailer or a lot of specialty boutique stores. I think it's going to be like a bistro, a coffee shop. There might be a restaurant. Maybe it serves some beers. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a place that serves like hamburgers and tacos, or if it's going to be a place that has sit-down meals, family-oriented, or is it going to be kind of a little bit more upscale? I don't know. I've seen some of the ideas. Kevin shared with me one of his ideas. And he was borrowing some of the concepts of a restaurant that was developed in Arizona. And he shared with me that plan, gosh, 6, 9 months ago. It looked pretty interesting, but is that what's going in? Maybe not. I mean, if this fitness center is greatly expanding. So is this fitness center going to bring greatness to Poway? Well, that's a good question. Um, I mean, according to one other person that came before the city council, his name's Sterling Miles. He said he's moving to the farm with his family this summer, and he said, Lifetime complements the farm, and the farm complements Poway, and you're all going to benefit from this. I hope to as well with my family. The most important thing to me is community, and Lifetime brings it. Now, bringing this guy in, he hasn't even moved into the farm yet. I'm sure Kevin probably found him, probably legitimately enthusiastic about the project. But I'm sure Kevin's trying to bring in some of his supporters to kind of back his line of thinking. But what's going to ultimately happen is that you're going to have, for lack of a better term, the equivalent of like a 24-hour fitness center. So what does that mean? Well, that means that it's going to be bigger. There's going to be a lot more people there. Probably it's going to be people that are not just living in the farm, or maybe not just living in Poway, but they're probably going to be drawing people from the greater area. I mean, especially in Rancho Bernardo, there used to be a Choose Fitness that was right there next to Vaughn's, and they closed like about a year ago. I used to go there. So all of those customers have been displaced. Many of them are going to 24-hour fitness in Escondido, or they're going down to LA Fitness on Poway Road. But I would imagine a lot of other people are going to be driving into this community to go to this fitness center. Now, of course, the fitness center loves that. There's probably not anywhere near enough memberships they're going to get from the people in the farm to really make that a viable business venture. They're going to have to get a lot of memberships from people that live outside the farm, people that live probably outside of Poway. Rancho Bernardo residents, maybe even Escondido, maybe even Rancho Penasquitos or 4S. So what that means is more traffic. And then that's what gets a lot of the NIMBYs in town kind of all up in a hissy fit. Oh my God, have you seen the traffic study? What are they going to be doing? Have you seen, how much pollution is this going to be damaging our environment by having more cars driving in? So you see a lot of these objections that are based on traffic, based on environment, the same objections you hear in almost every project that is being considered for development in San Diego County. Ultimately, they don't want the project to go in at all, but they will instead point to the environment, point to traffic. And sure, they don't want impact on environment. They don't want impact on traffic, but really they don't want the project at all. And so that's what we're seeing now. So you've got cases here in Poway where there are people that in Poway have feel like they've been burned by the city council, that they feel like they've been burned by all the development that went down on Poway Road. And there's a sense by some people in Poway that development has no limits, that there are open floodgates. And a lot of developers were spending money in our local election in 2020. In 2022. We went over that in detail. And there are a lot of development projects happening all throughout Poway for housing, in some cases, a little bit of commercial. There's actually a lot more commercial development going up in the business park. But this fitness center is an interesting thing. Now, there's a couple other comments here, and Pete, I'll get to your comments in just a moment. McNamara went on to say, the building of the butterfly farm and the education center, along with 14 acres of flower fields, is currently underway. McNamara said, the restaurants and social area space will be cut back by 10,000 feet. So I think a lot of people saw the butterfly farm very skeptically. They thought, oh, this is just a promotional gimmick. It's never really going to happen. But McNamara is determined to do that. And I think he's going to pull it through. Apparently he's there's a butterfly farm that was in Encinitas, and I think he's kind of moving a lot of their resources out here to Poway. But yeah, the restaurant and open space is going to be reduced by 10,000 feet to make way for this 30,000 square foot fitness center. And I would imagine there's going to be a lot more parking that's going to be necessary too. And McNamara went on to say a tennis court would not be built if Lifetime fails to receive approval from the city council, adding that pickleball has increased in popularity. Okay, that makes sense because pickleball is popular, tennis is less popular. The people that play tennis at Stoneridge have been displaced and they're already playing tennis somewhere else, like at the Rancho Arbolito Swim and Tennis Club or someplace else. But McNamara also said there would be no changes. And here is a change. So that's the thing is that a lot of people in Poway, certainly it's a minority, but a vocal minority, feel burned by the city council, feel burned by Kevin McNamara, that he hasn't followed through on what he said he promised. So to me, this is all fascinating. I'm interested in what you think. Got a comment here from Pete. Let's get Pete involved here. And Pete says, I believe that it comes down to freeway accessibility. Poway is just over the line to be considered freeway close. Yeah, but then people that are going to come to the fitness center mostly would not use that freeway. They would be driving in from Seven Oaks, from Poway, from Carmel Mountain, maybe from Westwood, and then go under the freeway. I don't think people are going to be commuting from Scripps Ranch or from San Marcos to come to this fitness club in Poway. So I don't think the freeway is that big of a deal. Now, just as an aside, I always am amazed that Poway has an auto row on Poway Road that is like at least 3 miles, if not 5 miles away from the 15 freeway. That to me is mind blowing. But Poway's found a way to make that work, and those businesses, they're thriving in their own way. I mean, it's not like a Kearney Mesa or a Mission Valley kind of a auto mall, but they're thriving in their own way. So, from my perspective, here's my angle on this. Now, do I have an objection to Lifetime Fitness going into the farm? No, I don't. In fact, I was a member of Choose, and having this go in its place, that would be maybe convenient for me. Now, apparently it's expensive. People are sharing that it's like $200 a month or something. Is that right? Really? Is that right? If that's true, it's going to be like a really high-end foo-foo club. If that's the case, I won't be interested. I was going to Choose for like $10 a month. It was a sweet deal. Maybe that's why they went out of business in Rancho Bernardo. But do I have an objection to Lifetime Fitness going into the farm? No, I don't. I mean, but I understand the point that the promise was made, and now this is a different. It's a bit of a bait and switch. It's a change when the promise was no changes. So I think people that are objecting to this are righteously objecting. Now, granted, I think they're just looking for something to object to, because I think most of the people that are objecting to the fitness club, a lot of them don't even live near the farm in Poway at all. They're just finding another opportunity where it's like a violation of democracy, essentially. And that's what they're really angry about. Now, granted, of course, there are certainly going to be some people in the former Stoneridge Country Club neighborhoods that are probably going to be angry about it. But I'll bet you money, they're the same people that were probably angry about the farm going in the first place. Change is hard. It really is. People don't like change. People just want things the way they've always been. I like change. Maybe I'm the exception here. I like progress. I saw land that was unproductive, that was a golf course that was dying, a golf course that went dead, a golf course that went fallow. Some people say that and think it's a blessing to have open space. I don't necessarily see it that way. I see that as a resource that is not productive. And I think transforming that area into housing is good for the people that buy the houses. It's good for the property values for everyone that lives in this area. It's good to solve part of the housing crisis. Now, granted, the housing crisis is a problem at many tiers of the housing marketplace. These homes are all over $1 million, but we have a housing crisis in the middle and the low end too. But more supply, more inventory helps relieve pressure, and that cascades throughout the whole housing market. So building more homes is good for the housing crisis. And oh, by the way, there's going to be some amenities here that will be appealing to people not only in the farm, but people that live outside the farm. And to me, that was interesting too. So I've generally been supportive. I just thought it was ridiculous that it had to go to a public vote in the first place. I mean, if you own the land and you want to convert it from a golf course to housing, I mean, that should be your right. You own the land, and you're just building more housing. Now, granted, I know a lot of people bought houses there, many of them with their backyard right up on the country club. And for them, that was probably like a lifetime goal to have a home on a golf course. But things change. A lot of people here in Poway 40 years ago wanted to have a house on a ranch and look at the hills on the outskirts of their ranch, and now there's housing everywhere. I mean, human civilization keeps growing, keeps building, keeps moving. And I'm generally supportive of that progress and that change. But there's a lot of people that aren't. So what do you think? Let me know your thoughts and comments in the live stream. Okay. I got one more topic I want to get to, and it's about Juneteenth. But before we do, just a couple of comments on John Riley Project. So, here we are. We're doing the live stream. We started at 12 noon today. I'm very happy about that. I want to keep doing this every Wednesday at 12 noon. That's my goal. And then if I can sneak in bonus podcasts on Tuesdays and Fridays, that'd be wonderful. I'm already doing 2 podcasts a week with Hacksaw. I want to keep to my 1 a week on John Riley Project and hopefully more. And then, every time I do these podcasts, I break them into little pieces, little video clips, and put those out on YouTube and share those on social media. It just takes a lot of effort, and I'm happy to do it. Just sometimes I run out of time. I mean, I've got clients and family and a lot of other things going on. But anyways, I'm happy I'm here today, and I'm going to really, really prioritize this to be here Wednesdays at noon. And if I can get in extras, that'll be bonus. If you want to learn more about the project, John Riley Project, you can go to my website, johnrileyproject.com. All of our podcast episodes, blog articles are all there. If you want to connect on social media, I have another website, connectwithjohnny.com. If you go to connectwithjohnny.com, there you can sign up on our mailing list. You can follow on social media. You can also get access to all the audio-only platforms where you can subscribe there as well. So get involved. And then, by the way, if you're interested, I also have a couple of e-commerce sites. One's PowayStore.com, where I have a bunch of Poway merchandise, t-shirts and mugs and some fun things there, as well as some blog articles on some of the top restaurants and things to do in Poway. And then I have another website called happiness76.com, which sells products and swag that's consistent with the whole idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is often one of the themes that I weave in to my podcast as appropriate, because those are sort of the higher ideals, the aspirational ideas of the podcast. And I like to stay focused there as well, because that's the point of view that I think I like to bring to this when we talk about current events, current news. Okay.